फकीरारुणिर्मत्प्रसृष्टः सुखं रात्रिश्चयिता वीतमन्युः त्वां दृशिवान् मृत्युमुखात् प्रमुक्तम् स्वर्गे लोके न भयं किञ्चनास्ति न तत्र त्वं न जरया बिभेति उभे तीर्त्वा अशनाया पिपासे शोकातिगो मोदते स्वर्गलोके सत्त्वमग्निं स्वर्ग्यमध्येषि मृत्यो प्रब्रूहितं श्रद्दधानाय मह्यम् स्वर्गलोका अमृतत्वं भजन्ते एतद्वितीयेन वृणे वरेण प्रते ब्रवीमि तदुमे निबोध स्वर्ग्यमग्निं नचिकेतः प्रजानन् अनन्तलोकाप्तिमथो प्रतिष्ठां विद्धि त्वमेतन्निहितं गुहायाम् लोकादिमग्निं तमुवाच तस्मै या इष्टकायावतीर्वा यथा वा स चापि तत्प्रत्यवदद्यथोक्तम् अथास्य मृत्युः पुनराहतुष्टः तमब्रवीत् प्रीयमाणो महात्मा वरं तवेहाद्य ददानि भूयः तवैव नाम्ना भवितायमग्निः शृङ्काञ्चे मामनेकरूपां गृहाण त्रिनाचिकेतस्त्रिभिरेत्यसन्धिं त्रिकर्मकृत्तरति जन्म मृत्यु ब्रह्मजज्ञं देवमीड्यं विदित्वा विचाये मां शान्तिमत्यन्तमेति त्रिनाचिकेतस्त्रयमेतद्विदित्वा य एवं विद्वांश्चिनुते नाचिकेतं स मृत्युपाशान् पुरतः प्रणोद्य शोकातिगो मोदते स्वर्गलोके एष तेऽग्निर्नचिकेतः स्वर्ग्यो यमवृणीथा द्वितीयेन वरेण एतमग्निं तवैव प्रवक्षन्ति जनासः तृतीयं वरं नचिकेतो वृणीष्व।
हरि ओम। The last mantra, the 10th mantra we did, Nachiketa asks the first boon. What we gathered from that mantra, as a son, he was duty bound to ensure his father was pacified, that when he sent back from having done his job with the Lord of death, he finds his father kind, he finds his father free from anger, and so on. The point we made was, it is to paint a perfect picture, or to paint a picture of what it is to become spiritual, or what it is to operate from a spiritual platform. Now, how do we understand spirituality here? Or how could we understand here? See, we said that spirituality is not about abandoning your duties and responsibilities, but rather it's about identifying your duties and responsibilities, your obligations. The fact that when we say obligation means you're bound by it, it becomes your bounden duty to perform. you're obliged to perform. So to be able to identify what your obligatory duties are, to be able to perform your dharma, not abandoning them in the name of pursuit of the higher. Now, when we perform, all of us end up performing duties and responsibilities. But the question is, in what spirit do we perform? Most of us, if not all, there are exceptions. Most of the people who perform the duties and responsibilities, they are, okay, let me paint a perfect picture first. A picture of perfection, a state of an ideal state is where you perform your duties with complete detachment. So there is that flavor of detachment. There is that flavor of a feeling that you have got nothing to do with that action, while you are giving your heart and soul to that performance of that karma, performance of that action. If you say you have nothing to do with that action, then why are you doing that action? Because I'm bound to perform. These are certain actions which I have no choice now, because it is based on the choices I've made in the past. I have to execute them. I have to perform them as nimitta matram, as a mere instrument. So you have to perform that instrument without getting emotionally carried away by playing that role. Whether it could be a son or a father or a husband or a neighbor or a student or a guru, whatever roles that you keep playing, you have to perform them with 100% detachment. Detachment is to have that attitude, that breath. You hold that breath, you hold that thought, you hold that attunement that you have got nothing to do with it, but I'm only doing it because I'm bound to perform. This is a picture of perfection. This is a picture of spiritual development. And this is what is being highlighted by Nachiketa. Now, in the Shastras, very rarely you find such a picture being painted. Many a time, picture of detachment is always portrayed as keeping away from your duties, is to isolate yourself from your families, to resort to places where you have nothing to do with it. So detachment is often portrayed as a physical separation from your dharma or your karma. Hardly you find a picture painted of a man who is performing his dharma as a man of detachment. And a perfect example we do quote is the example of Lord Shiva and Parvati. The picture of Lord Shiva and Parvati attending to their two children, Subramanya and Vinayaka, attending to the family chores. So this is a very rare picturization of perfection. So here, it's not trying to portray a man who is away from the activity. It's not trying to portray a person who is not in action. In fact, a man who is in the din and roar, in the thick and thin of the family affairs, and yet they were well above it. And to symbolize this, if you look at any deity, either a god or a goddess, when you find them seated, you find 1 feet is off the ground. You notice it carefully. If you acutely notice it, you find When they are seated, obviously, when they are standing, they don't do that. They're not doing any vrikshasan while they're standing. You and I have to do vrikshasan. Vrikshasan is to stand on one leg and then to raise your hand above. It's a yoga exercise. But when they are seated, you find one feet is off the ground. So both the feet touching the ground symbolizes complete involvement in an activity, which means rajas. When you take both your feet off the ground, figuratively, symbolizes you washed off your hands. You say, I've got nothing to do with you. You go through what you want to do. That kind of escapism, because that particular action could be a source of pain or misery or annoyance, something. So you say, I've got nothing to do with you. So that kind of a negative attitude, tamas. But when you put your feet, one feet on the ground, another feet off, symbolizes I'm in it and get out of it. One aspect of me is not connected with that activity, yet I'm in that activity. It's a very subtle message conveyed. So what we have to gather is the first job we have to do is to identify what are obligated duties. What are the list of obligated duties that you have? And they can be classified into two types. You are aware, but the point of reiteration is to identify your regular daily routine duties, which you cannot but abandon. They're daily duties that you have to perform, either for yourself or for your family or for your organization, your work, whatever these roles demand you to do, you have to perform. They are known as nitya karma, regular routine duties. Right? Routine means you have to perform them day in and day out. And then comes naimittika karma, occasional duties. They're not your regular duties. Once in a while they come. And when they come, they would take precedence over your regular duties. So naimittika karma, this is important. And in order to recognize naimittika, which is special occasional duties, and when these occasional duties come, they will take a precedence over the regular routine duties. Now the question you need to think, how would you be able to identify those special occasional duties and give a precedence over your regular routine duties? How would you be able to identify them? The answer has to be far little more precise than a standard answer, because you need that kind of fine alertness to be able to do so. Even though it could be the highest activity. For example, if teaching this knowledge is your highest activity, the highest obligation that you uphold, but there could be some activity that could come and it needs that this particular activity, which is the highest, has to be called off, because that action is taking a precedence over this. You get it? The question is, what is it that is required to be able to recognize and honor that special duty at the cost of your regular duty, however important it could be? What is required? AM. AM is Amitama.
Hari Om, Guruji.
Hari Om.
So what is required is viveka, discretion, as to what takes precedence and the action to decide on it is dependent on the effect to the receiver. For example, my regular duties is to conduct this session, these classes, but something that happens like an emergency, like a effect on somebody's health, something that requires, like an exigency suddenly crops up in an organization or with an individual, then I will have to excuse myself from the regular responsibility and attend to what has just cropped up, because otherwise it will have an effect on the individuals who are undergoing that particular scenario.
All right.
So intellect and viveka, discretion and intellect.
Viveka is the role of the intellect, no?
Yeah.
Because it is the intellect that actually discriminates, right?
Discriminates, yes, sir.
Yeah. But further to the intellect, there is another aspect. Is what I was looking at.
Applying the gunas, sir?
No.
Using the gunas as a yardstick?
I'm in fact still with the intellect only. In fact, what the real expression of intellect is the next answer I'm looking at. But so far so good. We'll take it from there.
Sir. Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks.
Yes, ma'am. US.
Yeah, Guruji, I was also thinking of a sharp intellect to differentiate between the special duties and regular duties. Is it the subtle intellect which?
No, see, the job of subtle intellect is only one. The job of subtle intellect is it differentiates between terrestrial and transcendental. That's all it does.
Okay.
It does no other role.
Yeah, that the sharp intellect.
It obviously the answer revolves around the intellect, but what is that concept which really is the intellect? See, when we say intellect, we talk in terms of discrimination, we talk in terms of reasoning, we talk in terms of clarity of thought, we talk in terms of controlling your emotions, but we seldom talk about this particular facet, which is actually the real aspect of intellect. I wouldn't say real, but in the context, it is that aspect. Where we are saying that you give that occasional duty a far greater importance than your regular duty. What is that aspect? All right, yes, got you. SR, any idea?
Yeah, it's still running around on the intellect, Guruji. Maybe it's, I think, somewhere I was just reading in the post, the conscience.
No. Conscience only tells you whether having made a choice, whether the choice was right or wrong. That is like a quality control.
It could be a differentiator. In fact, even the intellect also may get into the dilemma where which need to be preferred. Like we talk of in the corporate level, prioritization, which gives the better results, most effective results to be and it will have more impact across, where we dissect the whole activity between two parts. So where you give a one prioritization to one, other one will take in backseat for the various reasons there. So we go into the micro level of ways and means which should be given a priority. So this all depends upon the ultimate purpose and ultimate impact, which our time and energy or efforts or the priority is going to value it. one specific word, what we are looking beyond the intellect, I'm not able to get.
I can relate to you. See, the concept which we are trying to highlight is there is the sense of value. There's a difference between a sense of value vis-a-vis the sense of proportion. So the real intellect, the quality of intellect is in fact measured by your ability to proportion a value to a particular time and a context or a person or situation.
Yes.
So the real intellect, SR, is what we are saying is to have that sense of proportion to that value. You may have values, which is to identify your duties and responsibilities, your regular actions that you perform. But am I able to proportion that action? There's at times you may be doing the right action at the wrong place at the wrong time. So you lack the proportion. So when a special occasion comes, you must have the proportion to be able to shelve your regular duty and take that occasional duty as your primary dharma and perform it. So the sense of intellect here is to be understood as sense of proportion.
Yeah.
And a classic example given is to understand sense of value and proportion. The classic example is medicine vis-a-vis dosage. The medicine is the right medicine, but if it is not proportioned according to your requirement, the very same medicine can become poisonous. So am I able to proportion? Am I able to calibrate that particular action, whether even if it means withdrawal from an action or intensifying an action? All of that is referred with a sense of proportion. And sense of proportion does not operate on do's and don'ts. There are no standard checklists that this you must do, this you must not do. It is actually with reference to every situation in different context, how you apply it. And this sense of proportion is required to be able to give your occasional duties a precedence over regular duties. Is to identify. Otherwise, many a time we don't identify the duty at all. We may not identify. So first important thing is to identify your list of duties. As Amitama said, those special duties may come all of a sudden, or it could be something which you could have anticipated. That's also a possibility. But when they come, you must honor it. First point. The second is once you identify them, you must try to perform them without any motive, without any axe to grind. I'm trying to paint a perfect picture of what it is to act on detachment, because Nachiketa exhibited that. As a dutiful son, he did what his duty was. So having done, you take that aspect of there is no motive. You just do what you have to do without any expectation as a mere instrument. Opposed to it is where you get into an emotional excitement. In that process of excitement, you tend to get carried away with whatever duties and responsibilities, so-called duties and responsibilities. There are expectations associated with it. You associate disappointment, and unnecessarily you get attached. All of that spoils your performance of action. So perform your action with an attitude that I have got nothing to do with it. Every action So as a father, am I able to do my dharma to my child with an attitude that I've got nothing to do with her, yet I do everything to do for her because it's my duty as a father? No attachment, no expectation, no axe to grind. My God, it sounds almost impossible, isn't it? I do my duty as a guru or a teacher here, have everything to do with you for your development, and yet I say I've got nothing to do with you. Not easy, not easy at all. Now, how do you get to that state? What is that essential quality that will help you to develop this detachment? I'm focusing on one quality. There may be many qualities, but one quality which will help you to seriously inject. You may be performing your obligation, you may be doing your dharma, but you may be getting carried away by the role, you may be getting attached to it, you may be getting emotionally bound to it, it may be causing you extreme agony or disappointment or stress. So how to inject that spirit of detachment into the action? And what is that one quality which will help you inculcate that? Sinaji, any idea? One word answer, huh? Not more than a word. If at all, I'll give you 2 words.
Steadfastness.
Steadfastness. Steadfastness on what? When you say steadfastness is an open quality, I can be steadfast in sleeping also, I can be steadfast in talking also, I can be steadfast towards my goal. It can be steadfast in anything.
Steadfastness towards the want of self-discovery.
What you're saying is out of context. I want to perform my duty with detachment. And you're talking about steadfastness toward self-unfoldment, self-realization. I may have no iota of concept of self here, yet I have a duty towards my son, I have a duty towards my business, I have a duty towards my family. I have duties, I have to perform them. Day in and day out, I'm expected to perform them. How, and yet they may be causing enormous pain or agony to me. How do I do it with a charm? How can I be as gracious as possible performing that duty? Imagine a lady in the house having to do many chores. How can she remain gracious and yet perform her duty with a charm, with a smile, without getting attached, without affected? Is that not the need of the hour? You go and tell her, be steadfast towards the self. You say, what self? What steadfastness? What are you talking about? It doesn't gel with her. It doesn't rhyme with her life and her, what that dawns on her, It's daunting, not dawn. It's so daunting on her that she's consumed by those duties and responsibilities. She's affected by it. So I would say the real need of the hour is, if I can do it, if you can do it, if we all can carry on doing our duties with a charm, as gracious as possible, I tell you, that in itself is, in fact, if we are able to practice that quality steadfastly, I tell you, you are a man of perfection. You are an example for others to emulate. You get me, Sinaji?
Yeah, I must admit I have no idea.
No. You're thinking along. That's all that matters, right? Some comments here in the group. Samatvam, Shraddha, non-doership attitude, being a witness. Now, the question is, how do I cultivate that attitude of being a witness? The question is, how do I remain detached while I'm doing various roles? But Minima, that's also the question. How do I remain objective? Amitabh says spirit of surrender. No. Not that you all are wrong, but I'm trying to be very specific. Yes, Harish.
Guruji, what about dispassion, passion?
That's again a state, right?
Hmm.
That is what I said is symbolized by you. When the Lord sits, they put 1 foot on the ground and 1 foot off the ground. 1 foot on the ground, I'm passionately doing my duty. Other foot off the ground, I'm dispassionate to it. So there is a dispassionate passion. That's the state you're describing. What I'm trying to ask is, what is that one quality you need to practice to inject that spirit of detachment, where you can say, I have got nothing to do with it while you're doing it. And it's not necessarily something must happen for you to think in this manner. And you don't have to go through some trauma to be able to think this way. Is this not necessary that you remain detached? If you don't remain detached, your business can become a source of extreme agony. You may say, I'm going 7 days a week, from 7 to 9 in the morning to evening, I'm there at office doing my duty. But then that very same duty can be a source of extreme agony and restlessness for you. Is that something is right to augur? Is it something which you deserve to be subjected through? Nay. Carry the same thing with a perfect detachment. It's like saying, don't we take this example? You see a huge landscape or a mountain. Does that mountain become a burden on your retina? Does it become a weight on your eye? The image, does it become a burden because you're seeing a huge mountain? Nah. In fact, you admire a mountain. Even though it could be a grand spectacle, you admire it. So however lofty a job, however greater a challenge, it should not become a burden. Detachment. How do you practice it? A few more. Yeah, you're with me, Harish?
Yes.
So when you say dispassionate passion, you're describing the state. I'm asking what we should practice. Ashama says it's only a role I'm playing. Indeed, it's a role, but invariably we get carried away with the role. The role as a mother, the mother gets attached, extremely attached to the children. You are playing a role as a mother, but why are you getting so attached to your children? Understand that, my dear mother. You get it. I see a host of qualities that has come to surface. The one quality which really helps you is withdrawal from the activity itself. You should practice withdrawal from the world. Only when you withdraw, you will be able to reflect on these ideas. There must be a certain amount of withdrawal. Physical withdrawal from the activity. Take some time out. And the time out would be every day. How often can you withdraw into getting away from your din and roar of your activities, so that you're able to instill this thought and reinforce these ideas? So the quality you need to practice is withdrawal and inject that withdrawal with knowledge. So the two pedals to detachment, the steps that will get you to detachment, is withdraw from the world and reflect on the ideas. So when these two are done simultaneously. So when you withdraw from the world, what have you done? You have created a mental space. And what do you do with the mental space? Inject higher knowledge. And when you have gained, what happens? You will be able to, if required, withdraw further. So you have more strength. So what happens? You are getting stronger and stronger. It's like when a patient is admitted in the hospital, what is he done? Immediately isolated. He's isolated from everybody else in a protective environment. And then he's given right medication to get him back to his strength. Once you are well enough, you're pushed back out of the ICU into the normal ward. And then sooner thereafter, you said you're good to go back home, back into the world. That's how you recuperate. That's how you bounce back. So the only way you'll be able to bounce back spiritually is to withdraw. And one thing which is not practiced enough is withdrawal. I keep seeing it. I keep mentioning it because you don't do it. You find every reason to go back into the world. And the more you are in the world is like a quicksand. It keeps dragging you deeper and deeper. So I was reminded of this particular quality because Nachiketa was a picture of detachment. He was so dutifully bound towards his father. He did his dharma by asking the Lord to appease his father. Undoubtedly, in fact, Lord Yama agrees to it because he says a boon. You can't say, no, I'll not give you. No, he can't say, I can't grant you. So the next mantra, the 11th mantra, we see the story moves ahead with the Lord blessing the boy. Right, 11th, please.
यथा पुरस्ताद्भविता प्रतीत औदालकीरारुणिर्मत्प्रसृष्टः सुखं रात्रिश्चयितावीतमन्युः त्वां दृशिवान् मृत्युमुखात् प्रमुक्तम्.
With my blessings, Audalaki, the son of Varuna, will recognize you and will be possessed of affection as before. Upon seeing you released from the jaws of death, will lose his anger and will sleep peacefully at night. So Lord actually is blessing the boy with fulfillment of all his demands. There's no philosophical implication here. Whatever Nachiketa asked, the Lord said, all of it is granted. All of it is taken care of. Only thing you need to take a note is Nachiketa's father is being addressed differently. You say, suddenly, who is this new character in the story? There's no new character. Who are the characters we have seen so far? Gayatrima?
Vajastravas, these two.
Huh? Only two people. What happened to Nachiketa and Yama?
No, means Nachiketa's father was addressed this way.
I'm saying that the characters that we have seen so far in the story. We have Nachiketa,
Vajastravas, and now Audalaka, son of Varuna.
No, I mean not the different names. I'm saying the different characters that have appeared. Now, the different names of Nachiketa's father is Vajashravasaha, Gautama. it's insignificant, but I'm just mentioning because he refers to him. Audalaki and Aruni, who is the son of Aruna. So these are the 4 names of Nachiketa's father. You can take a note of it and forget it. Because it's of no importance. If only it may cause confusion to you. Just to ensure there's no confusion, whenever this name appears, it is only referring to Nachiketa's father. That's all. Be appeased. We'll move on to the 12th mantra. Anybody confused? I said Shanti. No need to confuse.
स्वर्गे लोके न भयं किञ्चनास्ति न तत्र त्वं न जरया बिभेति उभे तीर्त्वा अशनाया पिपासे शोकातिगो मोदते स्वर्गलोके.
As a preamble to the second boon, Nachiketa is actually glorifying Swarga. Very interesting. Here he says, in heaven, Swarge Loke, there is no fear, na bhayam, whatsoever, kinchan. There is no slightest fear, as you are not there. Because Lord Yama, you are not there in heaven. Therefore, there is no fear or death, nor is there fear of old age. Na jaraya. Jaraya means old age. Having crossed both hunger, ashanaya, and pipase, hunger and thirst, one rejoices in heaven above grief. Shokadikataha. Agataha. Above shoka, above grief. Modate. Swargaloke, in heaven they rejoice. Now, you must understand the context of this mantra. Just to give you a bird's eye view, Nachiketa is asking 3 boons, right? Because he was granted 3 boons. The first boon is to satisfy his father. The second boon is he asking, which is actually in the next couple of mantras you see is being clarified, the next few mantras. The second boon he's asking, please give me that Vedic ritual of performing yajna. He's saying, please teach me that Vedic ritual of performing the fire ritual, by which I would be able to help the society. In fact, the whole concept of fire ritual, you know, when you perform a yajna, yajna is not a private party. A yajna is actually a community worship. So anybody who's performing a yajna will invite the community. Their family and friends is always a community worship. So when he asks the second boon, he says, teach me the intricacies of performing that fire ritual, the Vedic fire ritual, which means give me the capacity to perform actions which will serve the society at large. So first he says, I want to satisfy my family. Second, he says, give me the ability that I can live a life of sacrifice. I should not be selfish. If all that knowledge I have, if I remain selfish, what is selfish? How do I squeeze you for myself? Oh, I have known you. How can I squeeze you? I've acquainted you. How can I abuse you? This is not spirituality. The thought of abusing some acquaintance or a friendship or a knowing for yourself should be unpalatable. It should bring about a sense of bitterness. Your conscience should not support it. So Nachiketa is protecting himself by saying, give me that ability that I may reach heaven by performing acts of sacrifice, which is symbolized by fire ritual, the second boon. And then he says, the third boon, he says, give me Atma Vidya. The first boon for the father, second boon for the society at large, third boon he asks for himself. I want the Brahma Vidya. Give me the knowledge of the self. And that's where Nachiketa is put to test. Is this fellow, Arey, why are you wasting your time in such, you're a young boy, go and enjoy the world, have fun, have maja, go see all over the world. I'll give you a round the world ticket, business class, first class ticket, I give you, enjoy everything. Why are you interested in Atma Vidya, he says. The famous words of Nachiketa, he says, Tavaiva vahastava nitya gite. He says, keep your damsels and horses with you. Give me Atma Vidya, he says. Because you will get to that mantra. It's just, I don't know, I get horripilations whenever I hear that, whenever you read that section. That picture of absolutely no interest. I only want that Atma Vidya. So 3 boons. So in the context here, he is, as a preamble to the second boon, which he is actually going to ask in the next mantra, he glorifies what heaven is. Swarga or heaven is the higher plane of consciousness. When do you get that Swarga? When are you transported to Swarga? Only when you live a life of service and sacrifice. When you perform unselfish work, you get punya. Tvam na tatra. You are not there. Who is not there? The 6 waves of sorrow are not there. What are the 6 waves of sorrow? Old age and death. When I say old age and death, the fear of death. As you start getting older, so everybody comes and celebrates your birthday. They don't know that the fear of death is consuming me. I wish I was a little younger. They are celebrating and the fear of death is consuming you. So I don't know, celebration for whom? Celebration for them, but it is a pain for me. So the first wave of death at the physical level is old age and the fear of death. At the level of prana, as the mantra says, it is hunger and thirst. At the mental level, it is sorrow and delusion. The 6 waves of sorrow. I repeat, the 6 waves of sorrow. At the physical level, it is old age and death, in brackets, the fear of death. At the level of prana, it is the hunger and thirst. At the level of the mental level, it is grief or sorrow arising out of delusion. He says, Tvam na tatra. All these are not there. Now, when all these are not there, what state would you be in? All these 6 waves of sorrow are not there. No, it's not at an absolute level, relative level. Huh? Please mark the words. I'll explain that why I say that. But my question is, when these waves of sorrow are not there, what state are you in? What state is one in? Keshwar Reddy garu.
Harivam Swamiji.
Namaskaram, sir. Hari Om. Chepandi.
It could be bliss.
Can you explain yourself, sir?
Without worrying about the future or present or past, and being peaceful in yourself.
Being in peace, being in bliss, being in reveling in happiness, right?
Yes, yes, Guruji.
And that is possible when these waves of sorrow are not there.
Yes, Guruji.
So the question I got to ask myself, we got to ask ourselves, is, am I in that heavenly state? Isn't it, sir?
Yes, sir.
Is it not our primary obligation that I must be in that heavenly state?
That is the purpose of life.
I would not say the purpose of life. The purpose of life is Atma Vidya, the third boon. This is the journey. That is the destination is to get to the Atman, to get to the self. So if you even connect the thought flow to the three boons, first he says, do your karma or seva, your dharma to your family and society. By doing first and second boon, first is be dutiful towards your family. Second is be dutiful towards the society. When you do this, then your real purpose comes in, which is to gain the self. But by serving the family and the society, what happens? You will remain in heaven. You will remain in peace. You will remain in happiness, isn't it?
You are pre-qualified for Brahma Vidya.
Pre-qualified, correct? A prerequisite. If you are not someone who is serving the society, you are unfit for the higher knowledge. Perfect. Thanks, Andy. Lovely. So in fact, if you ask me what is the definition of happiness, how do you define happiness? Happiness is defined as, Amita, any idea? How is happiness defined? Okay, forget how happiness is defined. What is your definition of happiness?
Wow.
Charminar and Begum Bazaar. No,
And
why I
yet-
say that is, let me justify what I say. Yesterday I spoke to Sinhaji. Sinhaji and Amitama are coming from Malaysia tomorrow to the ashram here. And Sinhaji said, please protect me. I said, protect from what? Protect me from Amitama, he said. I said, what's happening? Even before we come there, she has got a list of what?
Desires.
List of desires.
Worldly desires.
Shopping to go to Charminar and Begum Bazaar. They said, are you going to reside in Charminar or reside in the ashram? I was about to ask her. There was no mention of the ashram. He said, I'm planning to go directly there. Huh?
So thank you for giving that context, sir.
Yes,
Now
ma'am,
let
please.
me give you the definition of happiness. Having all this afforded to you in your environment, and yet being at peace if you don't reach it, if you don't get there.
Sinhaji, please take a note. Even if you don't get there, she is going to be happy. So that's how we will make sure that is going to be the end result.
Achieved.
Achieved. But tell me, what is the definition of happiness?
Wow, this is always a difficult one. So it is not dependent on anything physical. It is not dependent on whether you're able to achieve things externally. It is a place where you feel completely of nothingness and not needing anything. I just felt it when you were talking about the
are you
waves of sorrow.
are you able to relate to that?
Not
I
at
feel
all.
little. I feel there's a lot of hot and cold when she speaks, Sinaji. One end she talks of Charminar and Begum Bazaar, and she says state of nothingness. Gayatri Ma, I can't understand. They are like North Pole and South Pole to me.
That's why I'm in these classes, sir.
Yes. Thanks. That's the reason it makes whole class a little more enterprising.
That's
Now, how do you define happiness? See, the people, how does a layman relate happiness as? Happiness, a layman looks at it as pursuit of a desire, fulfillment of a desire, right? Pursuit of a desire or a fulfillment of a desire. And they're not wrong in their perception of happiness. Why? Because desire produces agitations, isn't it? Desire is agitation. Desire produces agitations. Unfulfilled desire produces varieties of emotions of anger, greed, jealousy, envy, etc. So anything associated with desire is discomfort, agitation, unhappiness. So what do people think? If I have a desire for something, let me go and satisfy it, I'll be happy. So in effect, what they are trying to do, which is the real definition of happiness. Happiness is defined as cessation of agitations. Where there are no agitation. So let me pull it out for you all. So happiness is defined as cessation of agitations. So as long, and agitation is described as desire, unfulfilled desire, emotions arising out of desire. 3 points. Agitation is described as desire. Second, unfulfilled desire. Third, the emotions arising out of desire. These 3 are synonymous to agitation. And cessation of that is happiness. And you can find happiness in 2 ways, temporary and permanent. So temporary, how do you find happiness? If something is bothering you, go and fulfill it. Pressing desire for something, go and satisfy it. Temporarily, at least calm, your mind will be calm. Until the next time the mind again craves for it. The second is permanent happiness is to rise above the desire, is to transcend the desire, is to drop the very desire itself. So either you're temporarily happy or permanently contented and reveling in bliss, depends on how you handle this desire. Because if the desire is not attended to, what happens? It's like a pressure cooker, isn't it? What do? You release the pressure valve, no? Little pressure release. So pressure release is what? Jai Shrima. What is pressure release? We can't hear you, ma.
Releasing our emotions.
Releasing your emotions. Okay. So the
Negative
frustration,
emotions.
negative
Frustration.
emotions,
Yes.
frustration. Or you can say that when the desire is not met, no?
Yes.
The desire is like the fire from the stove. The cooker is getting heated up. That's the pressure being built up because you're not able to satisfy your desires. And that's when you get a safety valve, no?
Yes.
The pressure release. So the pressure release can also be you go and satisfy the desire. Imagine you're tired of eating house food every day. Then what? Come to Yashima's house, she'll give you a variety of food, different food. Correct?
Yes,
I'm
yes.
going to knock into your door very soon, ma.
Yes, yes. Come. Welcome always, anytime.
I know you're always welcome. I know you're always inviting me, I'll certainly come, ma. I'm tired of the house and the food in the house. I hope my wife is not listening to this.
Both of you are welcome.
So when you are frustrated, what happens? You find an avenue to satisfy that palate, the desire for the tongue. You're sick and tired of a certain activity. You want change because you don't find happiness in it. So temporary satisfaction is you fulfill the desire. The real wise people, they understand the futility in the desire. They rise above the desire, transcend the desire. That they get to the state of absolute bliss or absolute happiness. So in the mantra, he says there is no fear whatsoever. What do you mean, no fear? Fear is associated with what? In the context, please. Huh? When does one experience fear? Vasantama?
When one feels insecure.
Question is, why does one feel insecure, or when does one experience fear? Please, I think Shivaji and Sinhaji both are thinking out of context. Avidya and ignorance are not in context. So, Vasantama, please don't think along these two people. Whom not to follow. Sorry, Shivaji.
When you believe that it is not going to help you in any way, you have the higher power is there to always, you believe in the higher, believe in yourself, then you will not have fear. You don't have any expectations, or you want your desires to be fulfilled. Don't have that attitude, then you will not have any fear. You're always satisfied, content. Yeah.
Okay. In fact, to take from what you have said, in effect, fear in the context arises due to selfishness. The more selfish you are, there is fear of losing your objects of possession. You have a job. Let's say you're an employee in an organization. Does the employee feel secure, or does he feel insecure about his job? That depends on how the worker is. What is the attitude of the worker? If the worker is selfish, he will feel very insecure of his job. But if the worker is a sacrificer, he's all the time giving to the organization. A person who is a giver will never feel insecure. He's not selfish. He brings an attitude of sacrifice in his work. He will never be insecure. You must be able to relate to the idea. So the fear, there is no fear in heaven. Means one who lives a life of sacrifice, in him there is no fear. The statement itself answers it, isn't it? So fear arises when you live life of selfishness, and selfishness takes you to hell, not heaven. So in heaven, there's no fear. Means one who lives a life of sacrifice, there is nothing to fear. What is there he doesn't arrogate anything to himself. Whatever he gets in his life is the fruits of his sacrifice, and he doesn't arrogate it. What is there to fear? What is there to lose? There's nothing to lose. So there's a sense of security that comes in to a man who lives a life of unselfishness. But one who selfishly pursues it, there's a lot of fear associated with it. You must be able to relate to the idea. You should be able to relate to the idea. Very, very practical, very powerfully your thoughts or attitude expresses in your life. SR, you able to relate to the idea, SR?
Yes, Guruji, it's as good as like giver never have a fear. The taker always have a fear.
Correct. A giver has no fear at all. Only a taker will have fear.
Perfect.
And this is not at the absolute level. Absolute level, punya is only for temporary, no? Because as long as the punya, the moment you exhaust your punya, means you exhaust your merits of your meritorious deeds, you're transported back to bhuloka. You're transported back to the mortal world where you go through the waves of sorrow again. So the root cause of sorrow, what we define happiness is, happiness defined as, Gajima, how do we define happiness as?
No agitations.
No agitation. And what's the cause of agitation? Three, we said,
Is the
three
desire.
reasons of agitation.
Agitations, desire,
First we said is desire. Second, no, when you say desire, what does it mean? Desire itself is an agitation. What is desire? An impulse in your mind, isn't it?
yes.
So the fact that one houses a desire itself means it produces an impulse in your mind. The question is relative or absolute? To the extent their mind is infested with desires, to that extent it causes an impulse. That's an agitation. So that sense we say desire is an agitation. Second is
Non-fulfillment of the desire.
unfulfillment of desire is agitation.
Hmm.
Then the emotions that arise out of desire are agitations. In the context of happiness. Now, what is the root cause of the sorrow or suffering? Is avidya in the form of desire. That's what it is. Ultimately, avidya has come, Shivaji. So the avidya in the form of your desire and emotions causes grief. In heaven, there is no grief. Antushtaha, santrupti irukkinga neenga ipo. So what is if we have to have one thought process of a takeaway from this verse, from this mantra, even though he mentions as a matter of fact that in heaven there is no grief, there is no fear, there is no hunger and thirst, there is none of these, he says. Tvam na tatra. So what is the one message that we can take from this mantra? Sedramanji.
Hari Om, Guru. Yeah.
Sir.
Yeah.
The question is, what is that one takeaway as sadhana we can take from this mantra?
How to get a happiness and lose sorrow.
But are they not effects? I'm asking in terms, what is the cause? What can we practice?
Being unselfish, desireless, transcendent desire. becoming wise.
One powerful thought perhaps could be that how can one be a giver and continue to be a giver at all times? Because in heaven there are none of this. So question is, how do I get to heaven? How do you get to heaven? Is by performing actions always with a fire in mind. The fire means a higher ideal. So when you perform actions for a larger cause, for the larger good, to that extent, the selfishness or desires is like light and darkness.
Service above self.
Service above your own limited self.
Doing actions.
Yajna, doing actions with the spirit of yajna. That is what the 12th mantra. Yes, Situji, right. The 12th mantra is trying to highlight the importance of having the fire, which means the spirit of yajna in every action that you perform. How can I have that? Is just to think and ask myself, can I be of any assistance? Can I be of any help? What can I do? That kind of attitude. And that's what the 12th mantra. And in the 13th mantra, Nachiketa is cashing in the second boon. Can we just show the mantra, please? I just want to read the translation. When we come back to the next satsang, we will take it. So in the 13th mantra, as you see, he says, "O death, thou knowest the fire," which is the ritual, which leads one to heaven. So having praised about heaven, he says, reveal that to me. For I have that faith, I have that shraddha in me, that fire by which those aim at the attainment of heaven attain immortality. I seek this as my second boon. Look at the clarity with which Nachiketa speaks. Look at the conviction with which he approaches the Lord of Death. That is so amazing in a student. The clear path, the clear purpose. There's no confusion what he wants to do. And perhaps we as students of this knowledge should have that clarity to our lives. If we bring that clarity, it makes us an ideal student. Nachiketa was an ideal student because he had a very lofty ideal. He had that spirit of dedication, and he says, I have that shraddha. I have that faith that I only want to do that. Sometimes we lack that shraddha in that purpose of serving a cause, which Nachiketa was not of that caliber. So he had full of shraddha. So please remember, please note the next satsang next week, due to a prior commitment, we will not be having the satsang the following weekend, which is the next Sunday and the next Saturday class. So the next Upanishad class would be on what is the next date? 24th.
24th.
So the next Upanishad class will be on the 24th. Okay. We'll come back. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.